Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, I will be presenting research on incorporating local culture in English teaching material for undergraduate students. My name is Widya Arindrayanti Risa, and this research was conducted by I Gusti Ngurah Agung Wijaya Mahardika, affiliated with the Balinese Language Education Department at Institut Hindu Dharma Negeri Denpasar. Let's begin with the introduction. Teaching material is an integral part of the teaching and learning process. It plays a vital role in improving students' achievement and motivation in learning. As the focus of teaching has shifted from being teacher-centered to student-centered, the importance of teaching materials has become even more pronounced. These materials now play a crucial role in engaging students and facilitating their learning. So, the purpose of this study is twofold. The first is develop culturally familiar teaching material. The researcher aim to create teaching materials that are culturally familiar for students in the Hinduism Education Department at IHDN Denpasar. By integrating elements of Balinese culture and Hinduism into the English learning materials, the researcher hope to make the content more relatable and engaging for the students. Second is address specific needs and improve motivation and achievement. The researcher goal is also to address the specific educational needs of these students by providing materials that related with their culture background. The researcher aimed to enhance their motivation to learn and ultimately improve their academic achievement in English. Next is the background. So let's discuss the background of this research. There are three main points that highlight the necessity of this study. The first is need for material combining English learning and Hinduism. There is a growing need to integrate English learning with Hinduism studies. By combining these two elements, the researcher can make the learning process more relevant and meaningful for students in Hinduism Education Department. The second is in existing materials too advanced and not changing. Current teaching materials are often too advanced for the students' level. They contain complex vocabulary and topics that are not engaging or relatable to the students, making it difficult for them to stay motivated and comprehend the material effectively. The third is students' perception of English as unnecessary. Many students view English as an unnecessary subject, especially within the context of their primary focus on Hinduism studies. This perception can lead to a lack of interest and lower motivation to learn the language. Next, let's discuss the methodology used in this research. The research design is centered around a development approach using a simplified ADDIE model, which stands for Analysis, Design, Development, Implementation, and Evaluation. So the first is research type. This is a research development study. The researcher employed the ADDIE model to systematically develop and evaluate the new teaching materials. Its phase 2, the model played a crucial role in ensuring the effectiveness and relevance of the materials. The participants of the study were 82 first semester students from the Hinduism Education Department, especially from classes 1A and 1B. These students were selected to test and provide feedback on the new teaching materials. Let's move on the development phases of the new teaching materials. The researchers' development process was divided into 4 key phases. The first is blueprint phase. In this initial phase, the researcher observed the existing materials to identify their weakness. This involved a thorough analysis of what was lacking or not working well in the current materials, such as content that was too advanced or not engaging enough for the student. The second is draft writing phase. Based on the findings and consultations with experts, the researcher created new teaching materials. This phase focused on designing content that was culturally relevant and more suitable for the students' level of understanding and engagement. The third is draft testing phase. The newly created materials were then tested in actual teaching learning activities with the students. This phase was crucial for gathering practical feedback and observing how well the materials worked in a real classroom setting. And the last is final production phase. Finally, the researcher revised the materials based on the feedback received during the testing phase. The final production phase involved making necessary adjustment and improvement to ensure the materials were effective and engaging for the students. Next, discuss about result of the research. The researcher identified several key weaknesses that needed to be addressed. The first is topic too foreign and advanced. The topics covered in the existing materials were often too foreign and advanced for the students. This made it difficult for them to relate to the content and understand the material effectively. The second is high difficulty level with advanced vocabulary. The materials contained a high level of difficulty, including advanced vocabulary that was challenging for the student. This complexity hindered their ability to grasp and retain the information. The third is monotonous layout with limited activities. The layout of the existing materials was monotonous with limited activities to engage the students. This lack of variety and interactivity contributed to a decrease the student motivation and interest in the subject. Now let's look at how the researcher developed the new teaching materials. The approach focused on the 3 main aspects. The first is cultural familiarity. The researcher selected reading text from culturally relevant sources such as newspapers, PHDI briefs, travel articles, and Hinduism textbooks. By incorporating topics related to Balinese Hinduism aspects and ceremonies, The researcher ensured that the materials were relatable and engaging for the students. The second is adjusting difficulty. To make the text more readable and comprehensible, the researcher modified the content to match the students' language proficiency levels. The researcher also used pictures and color schemes to enhance visual appeal and engagement, making the learning experience more enjoyable. The third is diverse activities. The researcher included a variety of activities to cater to different learning styles and keep students engaged. These activities covered structural points, speaking, listening, writing tasks, and language games. This diversity helped reinforce the materials and made learning more interactive and fun. Next is results. The researcher received positive responses from the students regarding the new teaching materials. The first is more interesting, easier to understand, and more enjoyable. Students found the new materials to be more interesting and enjoyable compared to the existing ones. The incorporation of culturally familiar content made the materials easier to understand and more relatable. The second is helped in learning English better. The new materials significantly aided students in learning English more actively. The adjustment in difficulty and the use of diverse activities helped improve their comprehension and retention of the language. The third is preferred over existing materials. Overall, the students expressed a clear preference for the new materials over the existing ones. They appreciated the efforts to make the content more engaging and aligned with their cultural background. Next is for discussion. The first, culturally familiar materials enhance student engagement and learning. The research shows that incorporating culturally familiar materials significantly enhances student engagement and learning. When students see their own culture reflected in their study materials, they are more likely to connect with the content and stay motivated. The second is importance of addressing student needs and prior knowledge. It's crucial to address the specific needs and prior knowledge of the students. Tailoring the materials to their cultural context and level of understanding ensures that the content is accessible and relevant, facilitating better learning outcomes. The third is positive impact on students' motivation and autonomous learning. The new materials have had a positive impact on student motivation. By making the learning process more enjoyable and relatable, students are more inclined to take an active role in their education. This encourages self-directed learning, where students feel empowered to engage with the material independently. Next is conclusion. The first is for the summary. Incorporating local culture into teaching has proven to enhance outcomes significantly by reducing the foreignness and stress associated with traditional materials. Cultural integration increases familiarity and comfort among students. This approach not only improves comprehension but also strengthens cultural identity within educational context. Next is for the recommendations. For future directions, it is recommended to conduct further research on the effectiveness of culturally familiar material in diverse educational settings. Exploring different cultural contexts will provide deeper insight into how such materials can be optimized to maximize learning benefit across various student population. So, thank you for you all attention and participation in today's presentation. Through our exploration of integrating local culture into English teaching materials, we have highlighted the profound impact this approach can have on student engagement, learning outcomes, and cultural appreciation. So, guys, if you have any further questions or insights, I welcome the opportunity to discuss them now. Once again, thank you for being part of this journey towards more effective and culturally enriched education.